Okay, so the first tip that is going to help you increase your appetite to make eating food extremely easy is to start eating maybe a bit cleaner than you currently are. The reason why I say eating clean is so important for increasing your appetite is because our body accepts those foods more, right? You've got to think about it like this. If you fed a petrol car diesel, then it's not going to go anywhere, right? You've got to feed a petrol car petrol, otherwise it's not going to work. It's going to reject the diesel if you put diesel in a petrol car, right? So it's the exact same thing with our body, right? You want to feed up your body clean, healthy, easily digestible foods, and that is one thing as well. We want to eat clean foods because it's going to help us digest the food more efficiently. The more we can get into the habit of eating clean foods, the more we're going to be able to digest them, the better you're going to feel in yourself as well, because you know you're doing a good thing. That just leads to you being more motivated to keep on eating more food, right? Because there's nothing worse than being in a demotivated, depressing spiral, and you know, junk food can sort of make you feel like that, right? Because of all the sugars and all the processed stuff. So, you know, stick to your whole foods, chicken, your beef, your fish, your eggs, right? Your healthy carbohydrates. So you've got your rice, you've got your pasta. Try and eat as healthy as you possibly can, and you will see a change in your appetite. Okay, so now moving on to tip number 2 that is going to help you increase your appetite. Having a junk cheat meal every now and then, right? And I know that is very contrary to what I've just said, you know, about eating clean. But this actually will help you eat clean consistently. Because you know, when you try to develop a habit and in the first stages, you know, you're fine, you're feeling motivated, and then all of a sudden 2 to 3 weeks later, you're all of a sudden just off track and you don't even know what happened and you're just back to square one. This is going to help you stay eating clean. And this is through something called achieving the thing through its opposite. Now, let me explain. Achieving something through its opposite is an extremely powerful way to think, and it works because us humans have biological limits. If we try and stay consistent with a diet for 365 days a year, us humans, we have these limits, so we can't necessarily sustain what we want to sustain constantly, right? So we need to revert to the opposite in order to carry on doing that thing. So let me give you guys an example. If you want to stay consistent with a clean diet, right, it's going to be very difficult at the start, right? And the reason is because any habit is when when you start building up a habit, because you're changing how your universe, how your reality manifests, because you're doing something different. Therefore, you're immediately going to start feeling resistance and friction towards what you want to do, right? So, in order to be consistent with something new, you've also got to be inconsistent with it at times, right? And in this situation, if you want to be eating clean and if you want to have a healthy diet, it's more than okay to be inconsistent and eat a junk or cheat meal every now and then, right? For example, so many people say the good old saying, in order to be disciplined, one has to also be ill-disciplined, right? And that is exactly, you know, that sort of drives the point home of achieving something through its opposite, right? If you want to be consistent in the gym for a long period of time, and if you want to make progression for years and years to come, you're going to have weeks where you will not go to the gym so your body can recover, so you can also get that motivation and that fuel and that desire and that fire back inside you in order to train and push harder. So, you know, it's like going up a ladder. The ideal situation would be we would climb up every single step of the ladder consistently as we go, right? However, there is going to be a point where you get so high up this ladder and your energy is going to be so low because you've been climbing for so long. Therefore, in order to stop yourself from falling all the way back down the ladder, you've got to just stop on one of the steps for a little minute, catch a breath, and then keep going. So in this situation, having a junk or cheat meal every now and then, you know, pizza, burger, sushi, right? Whatever it is, it will help you stay consistent because it is going to keep you and your cravings satisfied. Therefore, you know, you're not going to necessarily give in to any cravings that are built up over the long run. You guys, another really good example, right? So I've just been back from a holiday, and before the holiday, my cravings for eating junk food or just some cheap meal was absolutely ridiculous. So I intentionally ate a bit shit whilst I was on holiday. So now I'm back home, I don't have those cravings and I'm eating as clean as ever, right? So, you know, it just works like that. Okay, so now moving on to step number 3 of how to boost your appetite to make eating food so much easier so you can gain weight, right? And that is stop eating low calorie dense foods, right? We don't want to be eating big in terms of volume. We actually want to be keeping the portion sizes as small as we possibly can. This is genuinely one of my biggest and most effective bits of advice for gaining weight and making sure you're eating in a calorie surplus. And that is, you don't want to eat as much as you possibly can, but you actually want to eat as little as possible. So you want to keep the portion sizes as small as you possibly can, and just make sure the density, so the amount of calories in that portion, is absolutely maxed out, right? So you could either have like a 400 calorie portion here that's really, really big, or you could have like a 400 calorie portion here that's just like one bite, for example. You want to make eating this food as easy as possible by not eating foods that are high in volume and low in calorie density. You want to be eating foods that are as little in volume as possible, and you want to be keeping the calorie density, so you know, the amount of calories in a meal, as high as possible. And I'll give you guys a perfect example. So on my previous bulk, my breakfast was 6 eggs, 2 bagels, and half an avocado, orange juice, and within the eggs I had smoked salmon and cheese mixed in with them. And this was 1,250 calories and around 60 grams of protein, and it wasn't even that big. Yes, it was, you know, relatively big in terms of, like, you know, how you would compare that to a normal size meal. However, for 1,250 calories, that was almost a third of my daily intake in one meal, just like that, right? So that is an example of being as minimal as possible. So keeping the portion size as small as possible, as small as you possibly can, and making sure the calorie density is maxed out. There we go. Tip number 4 for increasing your appetite is eating at similar or at the same times every single day. So in other words, forming a schedule. This is so important, and I cannot express it enough, because it allows us to work with our body, right? So in other words, we basically just want to be as predictable with our dietary habits as possible. And the reason this is because us as humans, we have a hormone called our ghrelin hormone, right? And when this ghrelin hormone releases, it basically helps us stimulate our appetite, and it makes us feel hungry, right? So whenever you feel hungry, that's just your ghrelin hormone being released inside your body and sending a signal to your brain like, oh, I've got to be hungry now, I've got to eat food, right? And if we start eating at the similar or at the same times every single day, our body is going to start recognizing the pattern of when we're eating. Therefore, that this ghrelin hormone is going to be released at similar or at the same times every single day, right? So instead of feeling hungry and snacking at random times throughout the day and not necessarily having a plan, if you start eating dinner at 5 p.m. every day, for example, then around 4:30 you are going to start to feel absolutely starving, because your body knows you eat at that time. So it's going to help you, you know, because everything our body does is so we can survive, right? And eating food is one of the things us humans need to do in order to survive. Therefore, if we can help our body recognize when we do this as much as possible, our body is going to then in return help us eat food as much as we possibly can and when it's necessary, right? So forming a meal schedule and being predictable with your dietary habits is super important. So one way to basically just do this is list out your day every single half an hour from 6 until 10 p.m. at night, or whenever you wake up and you go to bed, right? List out all the non-negotiables you do in the day, usually. So for example, if you work from 9 to 5, block out that time, right? And identify the breaks you have, right? So if you have a break at work from 1 to 2, try and cram a meal or two in then. Or if you wake up at 7, have breakfast at 7:30. Or if you go to the gym at 4 p.m, have your pre-workout meal at 3:30 p.m. or 3 p.m. and then have your post-workout meal at 5:30 p.m. Or if you go to the gym at 4 p.m, have your pre-workout meal at 3:30 p.m. or 3 p.m. and then have your post-workout meal at 5:30 p.m, right? So you want to identify the non-negotiables and then just fill the gaps as you go with your meals. Tip number 5, do not drink liquids around 30 minutes to 45 minutes before you plan to eat. So now you've got your meal schedule and your meal plan set out for you. Now you know when you need to restrict yourself from consuming liquids, right? And the reason I say this is because You know when you down a gulp of water or that nice drink you got in a restaurant, for example, if you ordered a fizzy drink or an alcoholic beverage whilst you're waiting for your food in a restaurant, and then you slightly start to feel your appetite go away, that is because you're consuming liquids, right? Do you ever feel when you gulp down some water, you just feel absolutely bloated and your appetite just goes out the window and you don't even feel hungry? That's because of the liquid consumption, right? If you restrict yourself from consuming water, whether it's a protein shake or an alcoholic beverage or fizzy drink, especially fizzy drinks because they'll make you feel so full, right? Then, you know, your appetite is going to be preserved, right? You're going to protect that appetite. And then once you are consuming your dinner and after your dinner, then you can consume liquids. I still wouldn't recommend consuming loads of water or whatever it is whilst you're eating, because if you're a slow eater, then you can get full really quick. However, you know, bits and, you know, some sips here and there is going to help you obviously help the food go down without feeling full. And then obviously after the dinner, you can do whatever you want, right? You can have shots, you can have beers, you can, I'm joking, I wouldn't recommend alcohol if you're trying to bulk and gain muscle, but you get the point. So now moving on to step number 6 of how to increase your appetite day to day, and that is sleep, if you couldn't guess already, because I'm sitting on my bed. Not just for helping you in the gym and helping you, you know, increase your appetite, which I'll get onto in a second, but just your vitality, right? You know, your long-term health. Sleep is absolutely pivotal. And I recently had an epiphany on the importance of sleep, right? And it just goes like this. What would happen if us humans never slept again, right? If you just decided to never sleep again, what is the worst possible thing that's going to happen to you? You will die, right? Because sleep is essential to human life and bodily function, right? However, if we flip that extreme on its head and go to the other extreme, so we've now gone from, you know, if we don't sleep, the worst case scenario is that we'll die. If we optimize our sleep to the absolute max, then, you know, our long-term health is going to be good. We're going to be feeling 10 times better every day. We're going to be more productive every day. We're going to be more motivated to absolutely kick ass every day, right? So the better our sleep, the better the quality of the things we do every day. So number one, right, is you want to obviously have a clean bed, right? You don't want to be sleeping in a bed with crumbs, with, you know, bed sheets that's like 2 months old, that stinks, right? You know, every week, just change your covers. Number two, do not drink or eat at least 2 to 3 hours, actually around 2 to 3 hours before you go to bed, right? And because we are bulking, I'm going to change this number to at least 1 hour, because there may be times where you get home late from work or you've had a long day and you've still got to get your meal in when you're meant to go to bed in an hour. And by all means we must get our calories in. So, you know, whether we're not doing it, you know, whether we're not abiding by science and what science says, you know, we've got to get our calories in. So leave at least an hour before you go to bed without food or drink, and just make sure you finish off your full day of eating and drinking by at least an hour before you go to bed, right? Step number 3 links back to being clean, right? You know, we want our bed sheets to be clean. We also want us to be clean, right? If you get back home from a gym session or you get back home from a long day of work and you just get straight into your pajamas and straight into bed, you know, sweaty with all these germs on you, then you're naturally not going to sleep better, right? So you want to make sure you have a shower or a bath or just clean yourself before you get into your bed, right? This is also going to help you with your skin, right? It just helps overall, right? I don't really need to say any more. Step number 4 is that you have as minimal light in your room as possible, right? I didn't necessarily know this, but the tiniest bit of light in your room, whether that's through your blinds or a computer screen or something, right, it's going to negatively affect your sleep. And you may be thinking, but Ryan, you've got your eyes closed, so you won't be able to see anything. Well, your sleep still gets affected. So one little bad boy that I've invested in personally that's really helped me is this eye mask. So I just put this on every night. I go to bed, whether there's a light in my room or the hallway light's on outside because someone else is up later, I still get good sleep, and I literally do not see anything with these. I got this on Amazon. It literally cost me £10 or maybe even less, and it's a lifesaver. It's a long-term investment that is bloody worth it. All right. Another thing is you don't want noise in your room, right? As much as you may think like a fan or something will help you sleep and you've got into that habit, you need to try your best to get out of that habit, because noise really does negatively affect your sleep. And the final thing that I recommend is just having time to wind down before you go to bed, right? If you get in from a really intense session, or you just put a lot of stress on your body and then you get in and you try and go to bed straight away, you're probably not going to sleep for a very long time, and your body's not necessarily going to like that. You just want to sort of wind down into that state. And a couple of things that I really like to do is read, journal, or even meditate, right? It just really gets you into that calm state, which will then help you sleep efficiently. So now let's move on to the penultimate trick. So now onto the penultimate tip that's going to help you boost your appetite is not necessarily what you may think. And this, my friend, is cardio, right? So many people say when you're bulking and when you're trying to gain weight, do not do cardio because it will make things harder. I can see the argument for that. However, it's just not necessarily the case. And the reason I say this is because when we do cardio, not only do we feel good and we feel fucking amazing, right? But it also helps us increase our metabolism, right? And if you don't necessarily know what your metabolism is, it basically just refers to your ability to burn calories whether you're at rest or whether you're at physical activity. What it basically means is if you slowly start to increase your metabolism, you're going to be using more energy every day, right? And we can refer to energy as calories. So you're going to be burning more calories every day, aka using more energy, right? And because more is leaving your body's going to start to demand that you consume more as well. So in other words, because you're burning more calories and you're using more energy, your body's also going to be hungry because it wants those calories back, right? So although you'll be burning more calories every day, you'll naturally want to start eating more calories as well. And that is a trade-off that is definitely beneficial if you want to eat in a calorie surplus. Because what happens when people are inactive and they're sedentary is that their metabolism drops so much to the point where they really, really aren't hungry to eat at all. And although they're not burning many calories, their metabolism is so slow and their appetite is so shit that they don't want to eat food anyway, so they won't even eat in a surplus in that state, right? So I would argue that doing cardio 3 times a week for 20 minutes, whether that's on the incline treadmill, doing a walk, or going on a cycle, or doing a run, it will help tremendously, right? So now let's move on to the final step. Okay, so step number 8 is really, really simple. Just simply keeping yourself hydrated every day, right? The recommended amount of water for males, according to Harvard studies, is 3.7 litres of water every single day. And you want to try your best to match that. I wouldn't necessarily track it. Just drink when you're thirsty. And one thing that I also like to do as well in the morning when I first get up is just drink a pint of water. You know that phase in the morning where you got to get up and you got to get to work or you got to get on with the day, but you really want to stay in bed, right? The quicker you consume a pint of water, it will just wake your body up just like that, right? So it'll be a lot easier to get started with the day, and you will get started in a much higher vibrational state, my friend. Not only will it help that, but it will also help your appetite as well. Because you're keeping yourself hydrated, and remember what I said earlier, it will bloat you, right? And this will help you expand your stomach. It's not going to make you fat, right? You're not going to have a beer belly, but it's going to internally expand your stomach. Therefore, you can physically fit more food in there, so you can just eat more, right? So they are the 8 steps. Couldn't find my fingers. They are the 8 steps that is going to help you increase your appetite if you incorporate them slowly but surely. If you did enjoy this video, make sure you drop a like, leave a comment down below. I just did the complete wrong hand actions for what I was saying. If you did enjoy this video, make sure you drop a like, leave a comment down below, sharing your thoughts as well. I'll be really interested to hear them. And also, if you do want to stay around, I upload every Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday, so a subscription would genuinely go a long, long way. And if you do want more help from me beyond these YouTube videos, I do have a free community which you can check out with a lot of cool stuff in it, and I'd really love to have you. But anyways, I'll see you in the next one.